Hello, everyone. This long-awaited third interview. If you tried to get onto the live stream a few minutes ago, we had a little bit of technical difficulty figuring out how to do that. So more of that to come in future interviews, but I really want to welcome back my friend and colleague, Marco. And I just want to give you all an idea of what we are attempting to cover in this third interview today. We are going to be talking about why gold and silver has always been considered real money. We're going to be talking a little bit about how Russia killed the petrodollar, a bit of the history around that, silver manipulation and GameStop slash AMC plus rehypothecation. Woo, this is exciting stuff. The global circulation of money, SWIFT slash XRP, BIS, and Hawala. I can't wait to learn all of these aspects of what's going on and what's happened in our past. And finally, systems for community-based reinvestment. This is some of my favorite topics. And if we have a chance to get around to it, bank runs, fiat currencies, debt jubilees, and the reset of the global economy. Hello, Marco, take it away.
Hello, Charlotte. It's good to be back on with you again. Let me just see if we can share the screen, and we'll start with the first slide.
Great.
Okay, so let's see, what do we have here? So, okay, so just looking at a Forbes article here, and there's one paragraph here that really stands out to me about asset-backed paper money, which is usually backed by precious metals. And it's saying here, paper should never be money, but only employed as a representative sign of a value existing in metals or produce. At first, this was the mode in which paper currency was actually used among merchants. The government, borrowing this invention from private individuals, wished to make a real money of paper, and thus the original contrivance was perverted. Okay, so this guy, he goes right into the whole history of money in this article, which is why I've got it here. And we'll eventually have that linked in the description like a day or two after the video goes live. Hopefully sooner than that, but it'll definitely be up there eventually. And this guy goes right into what we wanted to get into initially with our interviews. We were going to start with the ancient history of money and work backwards towards the modern day, but we thought maybe we'll be a bit more practical and just talk about things that people can actually use and work with right now. But one of the things that is important to understand about gold and silver and why it's always been considered to be real money, it has industrial uses. Okay, so for example, when it comes to space travel, gold is quite often used in areas where it's like we're in space. It's like you can't lose lubrication and things like that, and that's why you always see these spacecraft that we're deploying. Have like these gold sheets over them and stuff like that, and also
absolutely. I mean, depending on which kind of history of humanity you follow, it's felt that perhaps you know, people came from other star systems to our Earth specifically to mine gold. So we know it has not only global value, but it has intergalactic value.
Yes, and a more historical sense from our civilization's point of view. One of the reasons why gold and silver is always considered to be real money is because it doesn't rust, it never decays. Okay, it's a highly condensed form of value. Okay, so if we move to an industrial hemp economy, for example, which is one way we could go about doing things, and replace that with petrodollar. The only downside of that is like hemp can decay and rot. Okay, we need to have a lot of hemp to represent $1, for example, and it's just not as practical as being able to go down to a bank like we used to in the 70s and prior, and just put a dollar note in and get that exchange for silver or gold.
I love it. And can I interject here for a moment, Marco, and share my little gold dust story?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to hear it.
I know we don't have a ton of time, but I'll just be quick. So back a long time ago, feels like forever ago, when I was in my early 20s, I worked up in the north, in the Yukon Territory of Canada, which is right beside Alaska. And up there, that's the area of the Klondike where the gold rush happened in 1898. And there's so much gold mining that still goes on in that region. And you have all these old time miners that are still out there working their claims. And I used to work in a hotel restaurant, and some of these old timers would actually come in and pay with gold. I kid you not. Like, they actually had at the front desk of the hotel, they actually had their scales, and they would like weigh it out and make the the exchange rate in dollars. Like, it was just hilarious. So, in my lifetime, I've seen that be used that way. It's not impossible to imagine that we could have that again.
Yeah, and one of the things that's great about gold currently is that you don't need to carry a lot of it to have thousands of dollars in your pocket, whereas silver is worth a lot less, and we'll get into silver manipulation a bit later during the interview, but silver is obviously worth a lot less. The good thing about that, though, that does make it easier to buy an ounce of silver. To buy an ounce of gold, you're looking at thousands of dollars. An ounce of silver is like only about $20 or $30 US dollars at the moment.
Yes, and I've been saying for a while in my readings and noticing that trading, like actually bartering with silver, is going to be a little bit easier, because if you have silver coins that are worth like, $30 or $50 or whatever, like that's more reasonable than if you have a gold coin that's worth like $300. It's if you're going to buy like a chicken or something, it's like, it's going to be a little hard to make change for that. Like, I'll have 300 chickens, please.
You're exactly right, Charles. Silver's a lot more divisible, because of cheaper value than gold, but it's also seriously undervalued as well. And like I said, we'll talk about that later. But I was just wondering if I could just get you to maybe get your cards and have a look and see what the price for gold and silver will be during the next month.
Woo! And we've got the sun, which represents gold, on the bottom here. I just picked it up, and that was what was on the bottom. So yeah, let's have a look over the next, month, and even the next 2 or 3 months I'm getting would be valuable to know.
That'd be good as well,
yeah, I'm going to go kind of like the next month, 2 months, and 3 months. Okay, so I'm glad I did it that way, because the next month is looking like there's some rocky highs and lows likely to happen. And this has been forecast. I know other readers have seen this, and I've been seeing something like this, where we may see these pretty high dramatic fluctuations in this next month. But it feels like we've got to just stay calm and hold on, because the month after that, it's looking really strong. And then the month after that, it feels like things return to a trading, like kind of, so I'm getting like maybe we go low, high, and then come to more of an equilibrium.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just go back to sharing the screen, and we'll move on to the next slide.
Great.
Okay. So, right. So one of the problems that we have with gold is like not so much a problem with gold itself, but how it can be used as coinage. In history, there's always been it's like people in power that have wanted to debase the value of the coin and keep the extra gold for themselves. This is where auditing becomes very important when it comes to having a gold-based or silver-based currency. It has to be audited to make sure that it is 100% silver or 100% gold, because if it's debased, then you're obviously not getting the full value. So you could be getting a gold coin, for example, and it might be 70% gold and 30% copper or something like that, and then you're being ripped off because you're not getting the full value that it's supposed to be. And debasement is something we might talk about later, during the it's like upcoming topics in the interview, but that's something that's it's like very important to understand. And this is another link here. We're just looking at why gold is considered money, and they're talking about it from purely from a it's like a scientific point of view.
Wow, this is fascinating stuff. I'm so glad you brought this to my awareness. I'm really, literally a treasure.
Yeah, so we'll leave this link in the description later as well. But in a nutshell, it's like there's scientific reasons why gold has always been considered to be money, and it goes back to what I was saying before about how it's like it doesn't become gaseous and lose its quantity over time, doesn't decay, doesn't rust.
Yes.
And it talks
Makes
about
so much sense.
it talks about the chemical talks from a chemical perspective about what they believe money, the values of money should be. It's like the value is not the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? The properties, the chemical properties have.
Okay.
All right. So I'll leave this link behind as well. But because we've got so much to cover today, I think we're just going to jump over to the next topic, which is Russia killing the petrodollar. So
yes.
So first, what we're going to do is we're going to just like have a bit of a look at how the petrodollar was first introduced. So, the president of France, Henry de Gaulle, in the early 70s and late 60s and early 70s, he was stockpiling a whole bunch of United States dollars as reserve for the French government. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to actually convert those dollars to gold, because it's supposed to be all backed by gold. And he kept asking the US government, just like say, look, here, I've got a few $100 million US dollars here. I want to get that back in the equivalent of gold. And the US government kept saying to him, no, you can't have it. All right. And it's like, de Gaulle started like going around saying, look, it doesn't look like the US actually has the gold that they say they have to back their currency. And eventually the jig was up, and Nixon finally admitted, no, we don't have the gold. We're going to go to a fiat currency now. And that's when we had the hyperinflation in the early 70s, where price of gas went through the roof and the price of everything went through the roof for a while there. And then it finally got stabilized when he introduced something called the petrodollar. Okay, so what the petrodollar is, it's like it's the US dollar backed by US military might, for lack of a better word. So what Nixon did, he contacted the OPEC countries, which are mostly Saudi Arabian countries, and he said to them, look, we'll protect you, we'll give you free protection for your countries against your enemies in exchange for making sure that you only let people buy oil using US dollars. Okay, so
wow. Yes, I mean, I kind of grasped this, but I love how you're really explaining it thoroughly.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, what he did was via the global energy system, he pretty much introduced a fiat currency through the back door and made the precious metal-backed currencies that we had around the world in Canada and Australia, for example, the UK, made them pretty much worthless, because their whole economy is being fueled by the US dollar now. All their cars, their trucks, it's like their ships, all that's being fueled by US dollars. So it's pretty much making the benefits that we're getting from their asset-backed currencies non-existent. Okay, like
so gold and silver is out, its usefulness is outdated or something.
No, it's not outdated. It's being supplanted by the petrodollar. Okay,
right. So but in that mindset of those times when, like oil was the greatest thing, that was like a priority. I can see that's how they slid it in there. That's how they made it fly.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say though is like what's very important to understand is like like I was saying in the first interview, it's like gold and silver. When you're backing that, using that to back paper currency, you're creating a production-based economy, okay, instead of a debt-based economy. When you have a fiat economy, a fiat currency-based economy, you're creating a debt-based economy, which tends to cannibalize itself and create inflation and things like that. And all that hyperinflation that the US was experiencing, the world was experiencing after the crash of the US dollar, when Nixon put his hands up and said, "Look, we don't have any gold, we're just going fiat now." All that was exported around the world through the petrodollar. Okay, so because as a basic form of monetary exchange, it's like everything that underpins it is pretty much energy. Okay, so your time and energy is like what underpins the value of a dollar. And when that dollar is also backed by it's like a product like silver or gold or industrial hemp, something physical that has value, then you have a production-based economy. And the only way for the economy to grow is to increase production.
Yes.
Okay? Increase assets. Okay, so when you're producing something, you're creating an asset. What he did with the petrodollar, he totally undermined that and destroyed that, and exported his debt globally to all the countries around the world that still had it's like an asset-backed currency. Okay, so eventually, after a few years, like I think in Australia, I think it was 1972 or 73, we went off the gold standard finally. That's because of what Nixon did with the petrodollar. And and that helped. It's like there was a lot of great benefits for the US, obviously, by doing this, but for the rest of the world, it wasn't that great, and it did increase the gap between the third world and the first world as far as economic growth is concerned.
Yes.
And obviously, it wasn't the greatest thing that ever happened, because if you go back and look at history and look at the 50s and 60s, where we were on a gold and silver standard, they were one of the most economic beneficial times in our history. It's like, and the gap between the rich and poor was very, very a lot narrower than what it is now. So I'll just move on to the next slide now that we've got a better understanding of how the petrodollar works. This goes into a bit more, pretty much goes into what I was just talking about the Bretton Woods system and the asset-backed currencies that came out of that. But what's interesting right now is like Saudi Arabia, which is like the OPEC's largest producer of oil. Earlier this year, they signed a military agreement with the Russian government. And what's interesting about this from an economic point of view is like that means that it's going to be a lot harder for the US to use their military might to keep pushing the US petrodollar. Okay, and a lot of people are talking about this possibly causing a collapse of the US dollar and maybe the global economy along with it. Okay, so that's what I was getting
I understand.
with Nixon and Russia killing the petrodollar. So I'm just going to get on to the next slide here. And
quite sobering. It's quite sobering, really, all of this. Yeah.
And also, it's like another thing that's quite interesting about the petrodollars. Like we have Saddam Hussein and the Iraq War in 2003, and it's like the reason that the US government going into Iraq was because they were behind September 11. We all know that's not true these days, but back then that's their reason.
The narrative. That's the narrative. Yep.
Because they bombed us in September 11. They brought down the Twin Towers, which they obviously never did, and it's all proven to be false after the fact. But the main reason why they wanted to go in and get rid of Saddam Hussein was because he was actually actively creating a petro-euro instead of a petro. He was willing to accept oil, selling his oil for euros instead of dollars, and that once again destroys the petrodollar. So this is an example of how the petrodollar works and how it's backed by military might. Anyone that goes against the narrative of selling their oil for US dollars only gets attacked, and their countries get destroyed. Okay, and another example of this is, I don't know whether this particular article actually talks about it. Let's have a look. Yeah, here we go. This is the one I was looking for. Okay, so now in more recent times, it's like Gaddafi, before, the reason why he was killed was because he was going to create an African currency called the Dinar, backed by gold. All right, and while he was a dictator, and he did quite a few evil things, as far as the people of Libya are concerned, he was very, very good to them. They had free education. They all received royalties from the oil that was sold. So it's like they were all living a very good life, much better, equivalent to what we had in the West, maybe even a bit better. And he wanted to spread that wealth throughout the whole subcontinent of Africa. And it's like he's going to do that with it's like a gold dinar, and that was also going to be how he's going to sell his oil using that gold dinar. And it would have done a lot of damage, not just to the US, but also to France, who has a lot of control over many of their former colonies there for something called the CFA, which is like an African franc, which is issued by the French Treasury. That would have totally destroyed all of that, and that would have freed up a lot of people in Africa to have, it's like free them from the bondage of not just US imperialism, but also French and British imperialism as well.
Yes. Wow.
So that's why we need to move back to something that's more more production-based currency, because the petrodollar is just obviously not great for humanity.
Yep. I hear you loud and clear.
So I think now we'll just get on to the next subject. So that's silver manipulation and GameStop and AMC, and also we'll look at rehypothecation as well. So, there's another link that I'll put in for Gaddafi. There's one last thing about the petrodollar, which I haven't mentioned yet. It's like Kennedy also, they reckon one of the reasons why Kennedy might have possibly got assassinated was because, as many people know, the Federal Reserve is not actually federal. It's a consortium of private banks, and those private banks are issuing notes of debt to the US people. And Kennedy wasn't very happy with that, so he started issuing silver dollar notes directly from the US Treasury instead of from the Federal Reserve. And what his
can you
plan,
back up for a sec, Marco? Silver dollar notes. Describe, so that's silver-backed dollars?
Notes, okay, but it's weren't issued by the Federal Reserve. They were issued directly by the US government from the US Treasury. And
there was silver to back them.
No silver to back them. And what his plan was, he was going to eventually, what they believe Kennedy's plan was, is that he was going to eventually flood the whole economy with these notes. And then once we got to the stage where they were the dominant note, then he could have brought down the Federal Reserve safely and crashed it without crashing the economy. Okay, and just put the money back under the control of the people. And that's just an example.
Does this sound familiar?
Yes, and that's just and that's what Nixon was trying to avoid. He was trying to do the complete opposite of that.
Absolutely,
And now I think we can finally move on to GameStop. Okay, so let's just go back to Wall Street Bets, and we might start there. Okay, so so there's this community on this website called Reddit that we're looking at now called Wall Street Bets, and it's just a whole community of it's like ordinary investors, just ordinary people, mums, dads. It's like just young people, etc. And they'll just get together and they'll just look for opportunities to invest in stocks. And what was interesting about the GameStop and AMC situation was they were looking at short positions on these stocks. And I'll just go back to this slide here and just give a quick primer on what short selling is all about. So when you're short selling a stock, you're actually making a bet that that stock is going to lose money, all right? And you can make money out of that. So what happens is like this, the person doing the shorting will go to a broker and they'll borrow a certain amount of shares for a stock from them. And they'll sell those, and there's obviously a fee involved here that they have to pay the broker, which is like, could be 5% or 10% or something like that of the value of the stock. And then they sell those shares straight away, okay, for this, in this example here, they're saying $500, okay, and then they have to give those shares back after a certain period of time. So it could be a couple of weeks or a month or 2 months, 3 months, whatever. When the contract expires, they have to send those same amount of shares back to the broker.
Okay.
Right? And if the stock loses value, that $500 worth of share that they've sold off in this initially sold off and repurchased for $400, they make $100 profit out of that. Oh,
I get it. Because they don't have to pay back as much. Yep. They don't. Yeah, got it.
Okay, so what these investors at Wall Street Bets discovered was that because of the coronavirus, a lot of hedge funds, which are big investment banks that invest in stocks and shares, believed that because of the coronavirus, movie theaters were going to not have people patronize them. There's a store called GameStop in the US, a brick and mortar store where gamers could go and buy games physically in person from a bricks and mortar store instead of online. And they believed that the coronavirus was going to kill those two businesses. Okay, so they started shorting them very heavily. Now that is understandable. Maybe we wouldn't consider it to be that ethical, but that's understandable that you'd see an opportunity like that and you'd take it. But what they also discovered, which was quite interesting, was they were shorting 140% of the stock that was actually available, which shouldn't be possible. Okay, you could short 100% of the stock that's available. You shouldn't be able to short 140% of the stock. And that is definitely unethical. So they were printing.
So they're basically shorting it based on knowing that they're going to be able to sell it back and make that kind of profit, and it won't be.
Certain amount of shares. But what I'm trying to say here, there's a certain amount of shares that are in circulation, okay? And if you want to just like short 100% of those shares, you could, because they're all in circulation, they're all available. What I actually discovered in Wall Street Bets was that 140% was available, which is not technically possible. Okay, so it's just like going to the bank and saying, look, I want to
that's almost 1.5 times.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's like you'd have to steal 40% of that money from the bank to be able to get that. Okay, so that's what was going on. They saw that they were not only shorting the stock, but there was more stock available than what there actually was in existence. So what they did, they did the opposite of shorting, which is going long, which means you hold the stock and you don't sell it. Okay, you wait till you get a profit out of it before you finally sell it. So if you buy $500 worth of shares like the short seller has done, you wait till that stock is worth at least 500, 550 or 600 or 1,000 or whatever. You don't sell. Okay, and so what they did is they snapped up, this whole community banded together, they snapped up all 100% of the stock that's available, and they just did not sell. Okay, so when the contracts came due for the short sellers, where they have to repurchase those same shares again and give them back to the broker, the price had actually risen because no one was actually selling them. And this caused something called a short squeeze, all right, which cost these hedge funds billions upon billions of dollars in lost profits. Okay. So they pretty much stuck the finger up at the establishment by doing that, and the establishment was very happy because they think, how dare these ordinary people these mum and dad investments, these these young people that are investing, how dare they recognize what we're doing and actually turn it against us, and that's what that. Okay, so it goes back to that renegade spirit that you're talking about before in previous interviews. That's like that's a very big part of the culture here at Wall Street Bets, and they're just looking for opportunities like that all the time. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that, they did notice some other things as well, which were interesting, and that was I don't know if I have any. Anyway, I've got some links to what I'm talking about here, which we'll put in the description later as well.
Great.
Yep, here we go. This is the next subject. So what they also discovered shortly after that, and it's not so much of a Wall Street Bets thing, but more of a general investment type thing that people had picked up on after that. It's like when people buy gold and silver, especially if you're a big investor. So let's just say you've got a few $100 million at your disposal, and you want to buy a whole bunch of gold and silver as a hedge against inflation, okay, and against crashes, stock market crashes and real estate crashes. What normally happens is you go to something called the COMEX, okay, which is a big exchange, and you buy a whole bunch of paper certificates for that amount of money. So you could buy $500 million worth of gold or $500 million worth of silver, and these are supposed to be backed by actual physical gold or silver in the vaults of the COMEX. Yes. But this is where we get into rehypothecation, where they're actually reselling that same gold and silver out to other customers. And we have like a bit of a game of musical chairs here, for lack of a better word. Whereas if you're the last person to sit on the chair, you don't get your gold and silver because it's already been sold to someone else. And the reason why they're doing this is because they want to make the fiat currency look like real money, because people have already always known that gold and silver is real money. So if they can suppress the price of gold and especially silver, then they can say to the rest of the world, look, see, this fiat currency is working great. Okay, we don't need to go back to a gold and silver standard. Look how worthless silver is right now. It's only 20 or 30 US dollars. Okay, we don't have to worry about getting into that. We can just keep going with the fiat currency because the fiat currency is okay. Okay, so what they're doing is they're using this gold and silver price manipulation to keep the fiat currency looking good, and they're doing that with paper. Okay, so they're issuing a lot more paper than what there actually is of silver, and they're reselling that paper to keep crashing the market and keep the prices low. And it's all pretty much funny money. It's not real. Okay. So they're using most like fake certificates to crash the market, more or less.
Got it.
It's like, and that's one of the reasons why it's like, and the same thing happens with shares as well. Okay, so there's a lot of rehypothecation which happens with shares, which is what Wall Street Bets saw when saw the short positions going out for GameStop and AMC. They saw that it's like there's more stock certificates out there being shorted than they should have been available, because it's like they're resold a lot of the time. So sometimes a single share can be resold to 3 or 4 different entities when it should only be resold to one person. And hypothecation, but really it's just a fancy word for theft, just like gain of function research is just like another word for bioweapon. Exactly. Is anything but patriotic, etc.
I mean, I'm laughing because I'm actually like practically crying, but it really, I get the point. The main point is that this is why it's so important to buy physical gold and silver.
Yes, and thank you so much for reminding me of that, Charlotte, because that's something that I reiterated several times during the first interview, and to a lesser degree, the second one is like, it's so important to actually have the gold or silver or stock in your physical possession. So if you had a stock, for example, you want to make sure that that stock is issued directly from the company and it has your name on it. If it has a broker's name on it, you have no idea whether you actually have the actual stock. Okay, same with gold and silver. You want to have it in your physical possession. You don't want to have a paper certificate saying you have that owed to you. You want to have the actual gold and silver. Obviously, that's a problem for some people storing it, but you can. It's like hire a safe. It's like if you don't want to have the money on site and be robbed, and it only costs you like $10 or $20 a month to hire a safe to store your gold or silver. Okay, and that way it's all completely under your control, and no one can take it from you, or no one can not give it to you. Is probably the better word. So let's just get on to the next slide. And this gentleman here, John Adams, he's an economist in my country, and he, it's like back in March of this year, he was let's just back a bit. The Perth Mint is one of the biggest mints in the world. It's right up there with the Canadian Mint. There's a couple of mints in the US and the UK, which are quite big as well. And this is where most of the world's silver comes from. It comes from one of these major mints. And this goes back to the paper certificates that I was talking about before. So this guy here, he had a certificate for 200 kilograms worth of gold, and he wanted to change his position from unallocated to allocated, which means they're going to allocate a whole bunch of silver in the vault for him. And he was told, this gentleman was told, there is no silver at the Perth Mint. They were unable to provide a guarantee as to when his request may be processed.
Wow.
So it goes back to the rehypothecation that I was talking about before, and how they're pretty much reselling the same product over and over again. And they're using those same certificates to also crash the market because they can do that.
Yep.
And it's another one. It's like about a month later where John Adams is talking about the Perth Mint running out of 1,000-ounce silver bars. And 1,000-ounce silver bars back in the pool, the ones they are selling were actually coming from China, which is not what people investing in the Perth Mint would expect. They'd expect the Perth Mint to actually be minting those silver bars on site, and that's the bars they'll be getting, but they actually run out of stock. And they couldn't actually do that, so they actually imported bars from China, which people don't really know whether that would be as good as what they would have had from the Perth Mint, because Perth Mint does have a very good reputation for high quality silver and gold products. China obviously doesn't. So.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's almost laughable, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And
when they tell us to follow the money, and you know.
And this goes back to something that's very important from a political point of view. People's like thinking, well, I'm not very happy with how the world's going. How can I protest against my government? One of the most effective things you can actually do is actually start investing more wisely into things like gold and silver especially, but also crypto and also stocks and shares. Okay, because when you're doing that, you're undermining the fiat currency, and you're also protecting yourself against inflation, the inflationary effects of fiat currency, as well as sticking it to the man to a less degree.
Totally. And as Catherine Austin Fitz suggests as well, pulling out of the big five banks, whatever the major banks are in your country, and investing in smaller local credit unions. And
cash is still good to have, but obviously you wouldn't want to have it as an investment necessarily, just more as as an emergency fund. Okay, so
that's right. I'm just talking about just removing all the different ways we can remove ourselves from that system.
We actually are protesting in a way by having cash on hand as well, because you're actually taking the money out of the banks that are causing the problems. Okay, you're still supporting the government in a way with the currency, but you're not supporting the banks anymore.
That's right.
And we're going to have some more links about rehypothecation in the description eventually as well. Now we're going to get on to the next subject, which is the global circulation of money. Okay. So what we're going to look at first is something called the SWIFT system. So if I'm going to send you, let's just say I'm going to book, I have booked readings with you in the past, and when I booked that reading with you, I had to pay you a certain amount of Canadian dollars. That Canadian dollars would have come from my bank account. and gone to your bank account using something called the SWIFT system, which is an acronym for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. And it's a messaging system where the banks use just like to accurately and securely send money transfer instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that's been that was invented, I think, in the early 70s.
Yep.
And it's been going ever since. And this is also tied to the it's not tied to the Bank of International Settlements, but it's closely related to that, because I think they're the ones that actually put this system in place. And the Bank of International Settlements is located in Switzerland, and it's the bank that is the that lends money to all the other central banks around the world.
Mm.
And we might get into that a little bit later as well. But what's interesting about SWIFT is that it might eventually get replaced by this cryptocurrency called Ripple, or XRP. So its ticker is XRP, and this is going to be able to do the same sort of functionality that the SWIFT system had, but it's going to be able to work with any type of value. Okay, so it could be frequent flyer miles or mobile minutes, which is something that's really important, especially in the third world and Africa and places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nearly free. Okay, so it's going to be cheaper than SWIFT as well. And the banks are showing a lot of interest in that, and that's something that looks like it might actually be good for humanity if that actually does replace SWIFT, because it's going to make the cost of our transactions a lot less.
Amazing.
And I'm just trying to remember how this tied to the Bank of International Settlements. I think really the only way it ties to the Bank of International Settlements, I'm pretty sure they're the ones that put the SWIFT system into place. Oh yes, this is what I want to see. Okay, so if we just have a look at this map here for the SWIFT system, okay, we can see all these countries in purple. They're all part of the SWIFT system, but we can see a nice big grey hole in the middle of the screen, which is the continent of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not able to use this system, okay, because it's like the central banks, it's like Switzerland, which pretty much controls the central banks around the world, aren't really that interested in dealing with Africa because, well, there's not that much money there for them to take advantage of. The amount of transactions that will be coming out of Africa will be so small they wouldn't really be able to make that much money out of it. Whereas if you compare the US or Europe or Canada or Australia or any of these countries in purple, there is because those countries are developing world or first world, there's a lot more money coming out of them. That brings me on to the next slide, which is Hawala.
Okay.
Okay, so Hawala is also a way to circulate money globally, and it's quite an ancient system. It's been around for, I'd say, most probably at least 1,000 years, ever since Islam has been around. Maybe even longer than that. Might even predate Islam. I'm not sure about the full history of it, but in a nutshell, what it is, it's like a way to send money. Okay, so once again, I'm doing a reading for you. Let's say I'm doing a reading with you next week and I need to pay you, okay? And instead of going through the banking system, which is what you'd normally do, I could find my local Hawala, who's like a broker or a dealer. Okay, he could be a shop owner, for example.
Yeah, you were telling me about this, could be somebody with a carpet shop or something.
Could be a guy with a carpet shop, okay? And let's just say Canada's really well known for, it's like the second best place in the world to get Persian carpets, because there's a lot of people making Persian carpets there, for example. And we like Persian carpets in Australia. So I go and see a Persian carpet dealer who's also a Hawala. And I say, look, I need to send $200 to Ashala for my reading here, so I could have my reading with her next week. And the Hawala say, yes, no problems, I can do that for you. Just give me a secret password to give Ashala, so when she goes to the store to get her money in Canada, it's like they'll know it's her and they'll give her the $200. Okay, so I do that, And then this Hawala contacts his counterpart in Canada that he imports the rugs from, and tells them the password. It's like, there's this lady called Charlotte's kind of coming in. The password she needs to get her money is blah, blah, blah. Okay, and you come in and say blah, 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 and you get your $200. And how the transfer takes place a lot of the time is like, next time it's like the guy in Australia imports some Persian rugs from this Canadian rug manufacturer. He adds an extra $200 to the. Okay, so Hawala's whole, and of course the global banks don't like this very much. Okay, because it's totally outside of their system, totally out of their control. So they like to say it's like a great way to launder money for terrorism, but actually the banks do a lot more in that area than what Hawala actually does. That's just another example of how money can be circulated globally. So we looked at 3 ways here. We looked at the SWIFT system, which came out of Switzerland and most probably through the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements. We're looking at the next possible replacement for that, which is XRP, and another system called Hawala, which has been around forever and could also be used alongside something like XRP.
Right. Wonderful. Now the XRP, that's that Ripple one that you were talking about?
It's a currency, yeah. It's also called Ripple. So now we're going to get into something that is close to both of our hearts, and this is like these are systems for community-based reinvestment. Okay, so yes, this is something that floats both of our boats in a big way. And the first one I'm going to look at is opportunity zones. Okay, so when was it? In 2017, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was signed into law by President Donald Trump. This is a initiative that was put together by Sean Parker, who was an investor, one of the first investors of Facebook. He also created something called Napster, which is a peer-to-peer system people used to use in the early 2000s to steal and share music globally. And a couple of Democratic representatives, Senators Tim Scott and Cory Booker. Anyways, like, it was their idea. They presented it to Donald Trump, and kudos to Donald Trump for actually putting this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act into place, which allowed us to create these opportunity zones. And in a nutshell, what they do is they allow very wealthy individuals to get tax cuts for investing in an area that is suffering extreme poverty in the US. Okay, so we're talking about areas like Detroit and Baltimore and places like that. Can
I just clarify for a second, Marco? So when you say invest, is there a difference between like donate and give as a charity? Is this like a charity?
This is not charitable at all. So that's a really good, important question to ask, because these billionaires and these companies that are investing in these opportunities zones, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts, unfortunately. They're doing it because they're getting huge tax breaks from the government for doing so. Okay, so that greatly reduces their risk for investing in these areas, and they can get it's like much bigger tax write-offs.
And when they invest, are they assuming that they're actually going to be taking some kind of profit from what they're investing in as well?
They're assuming they're going to try and make profit, but they're less scared about not making a profit by investing in a scary area like Detroit or Baltimore, which has a lot of crime. It's like a lot of crime in these cities, and it's like that's normally the last place these companies and these billionaires would like to invest in, because it's just not a safe place to do business. Okay, but by introducing these tax cuts, okay, and these tax deferments, they're making those areas very attractive to invest in now, which finally gives people in those cities and those regions an opportunity to get out of the cycle of poverty that they're in, and quite often crimes associated with that as well. And a lot of people in those cities that I was talking about, for example, are pushing drugs, selling drugs, and doing all this sort of thing. Not so much because they want to, but really it's like the only job opportunity that's open to them. Okay,
Yes.
so if we create other opportunities where they can go and work in it's like a factory or a retail store or something like that, and those jobs start becoming available, then they don't have to do that, especially if they don't want to. There's other ways they can make money, okay, that are legal and legitimate and actually help the community a lot more. Okay, so yeah, so I think that's still going on under the Biden administration. I hope it is, because it is a very good idea and it's one that I like. And it's just one example of how we can get money recirculating in the community in a positive way.
Okay.
And once again, we'll have links to these web pages in the description later. And the next one I'm going to get onto is the Peace Corps. All right.
Yeah.
So John F. Kennedy, he held a speech on October the 14th, 1960, to a crowd of 10,000 students at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And he asked them, how many of you are going to be doctors? How many of you are willing to spend your days in Ghana, for example? Or how many of you are technicians or engineers? And how many of you are willing to work in the foreign service and spend your lives traveling around the world? And the young audience responded quite enthusiastically to that. And 1,000 of them actually ended up signing this petition that he asked them to sign to serve abroad as part of the Peace Corps. Okay, and what the Peace Corps does, it allows students to gain more experience, but also help the world at the same time. So they could go to Ghana, like he mentioned in his speech, and they could be an engineer building bridges, or they could be a doctor healing the sick. Okay, and they could also be passing knowledge they have to the local community there and helping them to like build better infrastructure for themselves. Okay, and obviously there were some prerequisites that these countries that were inviting the Peace Corps into had to follow. So obviously they had to create a safe place for these students to go to. And there's a few other prerequisites as well, which I won't get into now, but which will also be in the links. But this is another example of how, well, in this case, we're talking about governments, how government can reinvest in the global community and help make the world a better place. And the Peace Corps is something that's still going on right now. And it's another thing that I'm quite interested in as well, how that works. I think it's a really interesting concept.
It is an interesting concept, and I just have to quickly interject and say that I participated in 1980 in a Canadian version of a government-sponsored youth initiative to have that dual purpose of providing service to underfunded regions of the country, and also to provide exposure and work experience and life skills to Canadian youth. And it was really well done. It ran for about a decade and a half, and it really was life-changing for me. And I highly value those kinds of initiatives because, yeah, here you've got these youth that have time, energy, the desire to learn, to grow, to travel, and then you put them in touch with places and people that have needs, and just add a little bit of stimulus into that, and away you go,
And the great thing about
we don't have to reinvent the wheel, because there's several of these.
Yeah, and that's what we can still reinvent the wheel as well. But and we're going to talk about someone who's going to be doing that shortly as well. But I guess one of the things I also love about this is like a really great exchange of energy, because not only is the community that you're going into when you're part of the Peace Corps is getting something out of it, but a lot of the time the people that are actually contributing and working as part of the Peace Corps are getting an enormous amount of energy back. They might not be getting physical money or anything like that, but they're getting such a great experience out of that. That stays
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, totally. It was like education and a rite of passage.
Yes.
It's fantastic. I did it for a year, so it was amazing.
So now we're going to get into cooperatives. Okay, so this is something that is your wheelhouse, and
it's my wheelhouse, and I'm going to be producing a series coming up. I've been talking about it for like 4 months, but it is in the process, I promise. And I'm going to be producing a series where I go into cooperatives and collectives and different types of regional organizations of, time banks and mutual aid organizations and stuff like that. So we'll just briefly touch in on that now, and then I can take that away.
What we both like about cooperatives is like, well, the first example with the US government and the opportunity zones. That's while it is a government initiative, it's more of a business one, okay, and it's a business community reinvesting in the community, which is quite good. Okay, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but and then we have the Peace Corps, which is government initiative. It's like investing in the global community, reinvesting in the global community through what we both love about cooperatives is ourselves, helping ourselves. Okay?
It's grassroots. It's from the ground up.
A billionaire to come into our community and help us
Absolutely.
out. For the government to step in and help us out, we're jumping in and we're doing it ourselves. And that's one of the things that's great about cooperatives.
Totally. And one of the things I love the most about those small scale grassroots initiatives is that you can literally start so small. Like you can start with 2 people, like it's just can be just this tiny little seed. And if it's viable and if it's timely and there's a market for that, it will just spring into life and take a whole community with it. Like it's, the proof is in the growth. And if it's ready and given a little bit of care, it will really turn into something. So it proves itself. The cooperative movement proves itself, and you can start so small, so you don't have to invest a lot of time, energy, or money and lose it all. And you can maneuver in it. You can start small, let it grow big, then you can scale back, reinvent it. It's organic, basically.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting about this topic is like, and while we both love it so much, it's like everyone's talking about a spiritual awakening or great awakening that's happening right now. And right now we're going through what you have been going through is something called an informational phase, where everyone's becoming aware and being informed of what's actually happening in the world. And that's what we're trying to do with this video. But the thing that we would both like to do ourselves is become more transformational, okay, by becoming more autonomous and standing in our own power and sovereignty a lot more. And that's what cooperatives give us the ability to do. We don't have, like I said, to wait, okay, like a little child to be helped, okay. We are helping ourselves. We are standing in our own power and helping ourselves.
And one of the beautiful aspects of these cooperative models is that they are almost always based on win-win solutions. So we've been living in such a dichotomy of, us versus them, and the haves and the have-nots, this power dynamic of the monetary system, especially like you're saying, the fiat-backed and all of that. And so what you find with a lot of these grassroots movements is it's the synergy of companionship and mutual aid that actually makes things flourish. And so I'm almost at the place myself where I'm just giving very little energy to things that are just for me, just to improve my life or my welfare. It's it's got to have some other fringe benefit for others. It's got to play both ways, because that is going to have vitality and sustainability, really.
And that's one of the things that I was hoping to get across in this video, with this series of 3 videos, which I haven't really made as clear as what I would have liked. And that is I think it's important to be to become wealthier than what you are, but to do it in such a way that not only are you growing and no longer a burden on the community, because you're able to support yourself in your old age and all that sort of thing, but also to do it in such a way that you help the community and you're being thoughtful and careful about how you're doing it. And if you can do both, that'd be great, because nobody wants to be a burden in society. It's like if we lose our jobs, we like to be able to have enough money put aside that it's not going to be an issue for us to be able to pay our bills or anything. When we retire, and finally, or we're no longer able to work for whatever reason, if we have enough money put aside for that, because we've done well in our investments, that's great as well, because we're no longer a burden on the community. But if we can reach that sort of state in a way that's beneficial for the community as part of the process of accumulating wealth, then that is ultimately what I think we both agree is like what we'd like to see happening with people that are watching these videos and looking to invest and make money for themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Marco. So well said. And, you know, I refer to it as the metaphysical miracle, because what I've noticed is that in these times where we are literally, our vibrational frequency is rising, and often people will say, you know, oh, I've been trying so hard and I just keep hitting these dead ends, these brick walls, and I'm like, you know, what am I doing wrong? And my intentions are so good. And almost always I say, okay, Spirit is saying, look up, think bigger, don't just think about, oh, I got to survive, I got to look after myself, me and my little, you know, like if you can relax and open up and think, okay, maybe I would like to see a win-win scenario. Maybe I would like to see if I can make this a bit larger and more dynamic, and see if I can create you know, a reciprocity or a synergy where other people benefit from the choices I'm making. And as soon as they think in that way, almost always something unlocks for them and things start happening. I've watched it again and again and again. And of course, we all suffer, you know, especially when we feel threatened with our security and our finances, we all turn inward and go, I've just got to look after my little plot, my little pot of gold or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
but
and that's things.
Yeah, like if we can just relax and see, well, all of us with our little pots of gold, and if we put those little pots together, even 2 or 3 of us with an idea, oh my gosh, what could happen, right?
And that's one of the things that, like I said to you before in the past, I consider myself to be a bit of a political hybrid. Okay, I think it's very important to look at both sides of politics. The left wing and the right wing can learn so much from each other. One of the things that I like about the right is like they do have this, they do seem to be tuned into the whole concept of abundance a lot more than what the left are, because it's like the left tends to be, it's like more concentrated on scarcity. Oh, there's not enough in the world for us to go around. Okay, we need to have, you know, raise taxes so the poor can be looked after and all that sort of thing. While the right tends to have the opposite point of view. It's like a lot of them are already like reasonably well off, middle class or upper middle class or rich themselves. And their attitude is like, no, I have enough. I can actually donate to my community. And I prefer to have the option to be able to choose how that's going to happen. And that's one of the things that's very important about standing in your own economic power, because whether you're right or left, let's just say we want to start a permaculture farm in our community, okay, and no one has the money to do it. But if you become successful in investing or in business yourself, then you can help kickstart that. All right. Whereas if you have the mindset of scarcity instead of abundance, and it's like you're finding life hard and you're finding hard to get money, you know, bring money in for yourself, you know, not just to help yourself. You're finding hard just to survive, just for yourself, let alone have a surplus to be able to share with the community. Whereas you know, it's like that's one thing about people that are on the right. A lot of them do donate a lot of money, and they do try to help their communities as much as they can. And once again, there's just so much power in that, because you can choose and help steer how your community is going to go when you have money yourself. Okay, if you don't have any money, you're powerless, and you're at the whim of governments and businesses coming into community and deciding what could happen. Okay, which is why I started off with some very good examples with the opportunity zones and the Peace Corps, but that's still brother coming in and helping the little brother out or the little sister out and saying, it's like, oh, you poor little thing, you can't do for yourself. Okay, we'll help you. Okay, and so it's like standing up and saying, I have the money, I can do it myself.
Awesome. Where have we got to? I see where we are. I think I see where we are in our long list here.
Yeah. So one of the ways we can help, you know, is like invest in communities through purchasing cooperatives. It's like a good example of that. It's like a local food bank. Okay, we do have like some corporate and government examples here, which is we're trying to steer away from because we like community-based cooperatives. And this is just something I found on the internet. I don't know anything about this particular organisation.
This is exactly, I'm going to be covering this in great detail.
Yeah.
These are the things I'm going to be talking about in my series. So.
Groups. We can buy a future harvest, for example, from a local farmer. He knows or she knows that her harvest is going to be, it's like she's got a guaranteed purchaser for it.
Yep.
But she's okay. And it's like we get it cheaper because we're helping guarantee that she's going to get a certain amount of money for her harvest. Okay,
and if it's local, we know we're going to have food even if the trucks don't come.
Yeah, that's even more important as well. Yes,
it is.
So and also that's funny you should mention that, because there's this guy called Max Egan. It's like he used to be on YouTube, but he got kicked off because it's a bit too controversial. But anyway, he's an Australian truther, very spiritual sort of guy, and he says the biggest problem in the world is that it's not that we're carnivores or vegetarians or omnivores. We're all truckatarians. Okay, so we all get everything on the truck. And we've got to stop being truckatarians. We've got to be investing. We've got to be able to just go next door, walk next door, and get our food instead of just have it come on a truck from interstate or overseas.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, that gets all into the 100-mile diet and the 50-mile diet and the 50-yard diet and all that kind of stuff. It's so great. Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's just move on to something else that is close to my heart as well, because this is like cryptocurrency before there was cryptocurrency.
Yep.
Okay, and this is something called a local exchange trading system, and it reached the height of popularity in the 90s, but in the 80s and 90s, what people would be doing is like someone in the local community would have a community of, you'd have like a personal computer, or she would have a personal computer and would have a database on it, okay, and it could store all the information about all the trades that are happening in the local community. So it could keep track of who's bartering what and for how much. And it's usually tied to the local government currencies, so Canadian dollar or US dollar or British pound or whatever. And it's like, and people could barter using the system. Okay, so if you had no money, okay, if you're unlucky enough to be unemployed, but you had a skill or a service that you could offer the community, or even a product, you could be growing vegetables in your backyard, you could actually barter that under the local exchange trading system and get other goods and services in exchange. Okay, so you're growing some vegetables in your backyard. It's like you're a young mother who's looking for work, and you need someone to babysit your children while you're going out looking for work. Okay, so you sold your vegetables from your backyard, and you could use the money you made from that to hire a babysitter to look after your children while you go out and look for work. That's just an example of how a local exchange trading system could work, and it's all that information is stored in a computer database. And
I've just got to interrupt you there for a second, Marco, because in your example, I'm like, ooh, I right away see expansion into that idea of how about you're doing a time bank with other single parents who are sharing childcare. And then you're actually going out and working in the garden, and that's your job. Woohoo!
So there's lots of different ways we can go there, and it's like we're only really limited by our imagination here, and I think that's what with what you just said. There's so many different ways we can go about doing this, and now we're going to get on to it's like something a term called Ubuntu. It's like, which is an African term for unity through community, and it's pretty much an African word that describes everything we've been talking about with cooperatives and community-based reinvestment. And it's like, and Ubuntu is used in a lot of for a lot of projects as well. So there's like an operating system called Linux. It's like created by a South African man called Mark Thwaite, who did a lot with internet security in the late 90s and sold his company for about $500 million. And he created the Ubuntu Linux project, which is a free open source operating system that's a really nice alternative to Windows and Mac OS. And there's another project that also uses the word Ubuntu, which is called the One Small Town Initiative. Okay, and it's
I'm excited. I'm like, Michael Tellinger, if you're listening, you're my next guest that I want to have on my channel.
Yeah, and what he's doing is really, really, really interesting. And well, I'll let you take over this because I think you know a little bit more about this than what I do. So if you just describe it to the audience.
And I'm definitely going to be doing features on the Ubuntu One Small Town movement. It basically I couldn't do it justice describing it in any synopsis, but this is an innovative. I see it like a technology. It is basically a system that can transform local, regional economies one small town at a time, and it's based on this philosophy of a more gifting-oriented economy, basically slowly weaning us off this treadmill of working for the petrodollar to pay for the home and the infrastructure that's built on the petrodollar. And it's just reversing that, slowly reversing that dependency and creating an interdependency in a smaller community. And that's really the best way I can describe it briefly. I will be featuring at least one full program on the Ubuntu Small Town manifesto, and hopefully having Michael Tellinger come on and talk about that with me. So stay tuned. Yeah.
So the way I see what he's doing, he's pretty much combining the three initiatives that we've been talking about so far. We started off with the business initiative, with the business communities, reinvesting in the community. Then we talked about the government initiatives for reinvesting in our community. And then we ended with the individuals reinvesting in their own community. Okay, so what One Small Town does, it's like the local government's got to be involved. Okay, business people from outside the community can invest in One Small Town. And one of the things I really like about what Michael Tellinger is doing, he's offering free energy to the whole community. So he's putting up solar power, wind power, hydro power in these communities, and he's using that free electricity to help fund future growth for, it's like manufacturing, retail, processing of farming products, etc. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he started that in South Africa, but it's I think the official first small one town is actually in Frontenac, North Frontenac, near Ontario in Canada, by the looks of things. Yep. And there's going to be 2 or 3 that are going to be starting up around the rest of the world soon. But actually, here's his, in his own words, what he's talking about here. So the town has to have a population between 4,000 and 7,000. The mayor, town manager, city council, and sheriff have to be fully supportive of the mission. At least 20% of the residents have to express support for the One Small Town initiative. Mm-hmm. Have to be able to identify unique opportunities of the town. So it could be agricultural, environmental possibilities. That could be
manufacturing, resource extraction. Yeah,
utilised for the benefit for the community. Identify the skills and abilities of the people that have expressed support for the initiative. Analyse existing factories and industry that might be dormant to strategically plan for new projects and businesses to launch the community. Mm-hmm. And the funding that they're going to need for that can come from outside of the town, from business people that want to invest in it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously,
because it's been shown, it's been proven that it generates profit really quickly, this model.
Yeah.
So outside investors are pretty much guaranteed, because of the way the model is stacked with the labor force and the capital investment. It's brilliant. It's almost guaranteed.
I'm big fans of investing locally in our own communities. If you want to invest globally, this could be a good way to do it. invest in North Frontenac and any of the other towns that Michael's going to get up and running.
So sweet.
And
thanks for bringing this in, Marco, because it's one of my favorites.
There's something I knew about before, but yeah, just like you reminded me of it, and I thought it was really important to include that today, because one of the things I really loved about it does combine all those three different types of community reinvestment I was talking about before: business reinvestment, government reinvestment, individual reinvestment. And one of the things that also happens with one small town is like people will volunteer like at least 3 hours of their time a week. Okay, and and that also goes back to the win-win you were talking about before, because they're not doing it just for free. They'll actually get reimbursed somehow back from the community for offering their time. And it's just a really great way.
And those participants that are in that project are already getting free energy. So
yeah. Anyway, so once again, back to the evil fiat currency that I like to give a hard time.
We'll
it is
close
bad,
off by
make it sound
closing that back door again, right? Yeah.
It's definitely not a step in the right direction, though. You'd have to admit that much. Okay. And we're looking at it's like so this is an article written, someone talking about breaking the chains of student debt. Okay, and she's looking at lessons from Babylonia.
Wow.
This is an interesting article, which we'll also link to in the description later. But one of the things that I find interesting about Babylon is they actually, and also this is in the Bible as well, mentioned in the Bible quite often, it was like they did have fiat currency systems back then. And it's like what they discovered was that these systems would implode after about it's like 40, 50 years. Okay, so they'd have to, after 40, 50 years, to stop the population from fleeing the local economy and going to the enemy or going to a completely different area and just leaving the rulers without anyone to work for them. They'd create debt jubilees, okay, and one of the ways, and quite often they used to record all the debts on clay tablets, and they'd smash those clay tablets, okay, and start again from scratch, okay, because it's a cannibalistic type system that eats itself, for lack of a better word, and it's not a productive-based system like the asset-backed currencies we were talking about before. They had to do that to reset the economy and get it kick-started again.
And isn't that like, just help me get my mind around this, Marco? That's basically like the musical chairs analogy. Like whoever's on the bottom end of that, they end up with nothing, right? Like they lose.
No, it's like because all debts are forgiven, so it's not quite as bad as that. Okay, but it's bad that they have to do it in the first place, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because if they don't, then the economy is going to implode. No one really loses out because everyone gets their debts forgiven, except for people that are employing people in the community. Okay, so if they have slaves that need to be paid, or they have free people that are working for them need to be paid, the debts that they owe them for their wages are not forgiven. They still have to pay those, but anything else is forgiven. So let's just say you had a restaurant back in the ancient Babylonian times, so serving your town. It's like you wouldn't have to pay the person supplying, the farmer supplying all the food for your restaurant. Okay, your debts.
So it's kind of like everybody just eats that loss and starts over.
That's what by smashing the tablets. And you heard of the saying, "Wipe the slate clean." All right, that's also it's like it's like very similar to smashing the tablets and just wiping the slate clean and starting again from scratch. Okay, no one owes any money anymore, but nobody has any assets anymore either. Well, actually, maybe they still have assets, but they don't have any debts anymore. That's pretty much in a nutshell. And that brings us around to the current reset
options, right?
Yep. Okay, and we're talking about the Great Reset, which the World Economic Forum has been pushing for a couple of years now because of the what's going on with the global health system and the effects that's happening recently on the economy. It's like they're quite concerned about how that is going to affect the global economy. And they're saying that, well, look, we need to reset the economy. And usually they need wars to do that. Okay, that's why we had the World War I and World War II. It's like because they needed to reset the economies in those times. And the easiest way to do that is under the cover of war. They don't have the cover of war at the moment. They do have the cover of a global health crisis. And what they're talking about is the complete opposite of what we're talking about, okay? They're talking about something called stakeholder capitalism, okay, for the Great Reset. They want just like everyone's debts will be forgiven, but nobody will own anything anymore. It's like it'll be completely service-based economy where, let's just say you invite me over to dinner for your, it's like for a special occasion, and you're about to cook dinner, and we're under this Great Reset system already, and you won't be able to own any pots and pans. But what they're saying, the great thing is, though, you'll be able to hire pots and pans to cook your special dinner, and someone will bring those pots and pans to your door within 5 minutes of you pushing a button on your phone, and nobody will own anything, but everything will be so great, and it's like not only will that be like a completely service-based economy where nobody owns anything.
But hold on, Marco. I put a YouTube video up and I said the wrong thing, so I don't get any pots and pans today.
Okay.
Right.
But not only is this service-based economy where we own nothing, we have no privacy, but it's never been better according to them.
Wait a minute, Marco. I think you said something too. You used a word, so actually you can't open the gate at my apartment. Because your chip doesn't work. So I guess we're not having dinner after all.
It's there's that good old social credit system, which they also want to introduce coming into play there, because I've been a bit too naughty.
Oh my Lord, yeah.
So I can't come and visit you anymore, Charlotte. Sorry.
I guess we have to be we have to be very quiet if we want to have a dinner ever.
But anyway, there's something else which is the complete antithesis of everything we've been talking about so far, with business reinvestment in the community and government reinvestment in the global community and individual investment in the community with co-ops, and the Ubuntu movement by Michael Tellinger, which combines all three of those together. They're talking about something called stakeholder capitalism, which is pretty much that turned on its head. Okay, so with stakeholder capitalism, what happens is they're going to bring corporations into the United Nations and have them play a role in what happens with the decisions the United Nations makes. But also, those same corporations are going to come into our local countries, our local communities in our countries, and they're going to have a major say in how our communities and countries are run. Okay, and going to be one of the voices that will need to be listened to. The government will obviously still be another voice, but with stakeholder capitalism, the corporations can possibly have the power to overturn what governments might want to have happen in their countries and their communities. And civil society, which is like the individuals like us, will have very little say at all. Okay, so
I just did cards on these three options, or two. We've only got two options at the moment.
We do sort of like have three, but we'll just see. Yeah, so I'd be interested to see what the cards have to say, Charlotte, and just.
Yeah, so the third option would be just to kind of do it ourselves, right? Is that like maybe?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so first option, that old boys club card that I've shown you before, the emperor. He's on his throne. He's got all the money. There's the pentacles. There's his workforce. There's the, this just the whole, that reset is based on it's basically business as usual, but with tighter grip on everything. But what happens with even the idea that it seems like somehow we are like just sliding towards these inevitabilities, whether it's proposed that way, which feels like that's that's the kind of global consensus model that's operating right now. Like we're kind of feeling that we're all sliding into place in that game that they've got going on. But what that gives us is it gives us the incentive to think outside the old system that we've been in for a while. We're kind of like, they're going, okay, we're going to wedge you into this new system. And as we're getting wedged, we're going, wait a minute, hold on. I'm out of that system. I'm out of the old one. And wow, like I could do all kinds of things out here. So that feels like good aspect of like, they're going to get us moving in that direction. But while we're en route, we're going to see all these other escape routes. One of them is what you were talking about. What's the name of the next one? The corporate, what did you call it?
Sorry, Charlotte, just had to step out for a second. Yeah, corporate reinvestment.
Corporate reinvestment. So that one, that one is.
Oh, sorry, you mean
no, I feel.
Was it stakeholder
sorry,
capitalism?
What was that?
Stakeholder capitalism.
Stakeholder capitalism. So what I get with that one is it's got the right concept, but it is a little bit heady. It's a little bit, and you know what, people, I feel like by the time we're in this transition, people are going to be like, get me away from any kind of centralized power. Like, I just feel like people are going to be so kind of psyched out in trusting corporations or larger systems. I'm not saying it won't have its place in the transition, but I don't feel like it's the end. I feel like we're going to keep as global citizens going, you know what? Okay, we're out of that old system that's been controlling us for eons. We've seen that there's other possibilities. We've been given another version of that, which has kind of got us warmed up. And now we're taking the helm, because that second version is like, again, I see that it's going to feel a bit, it's going to feel a little bit limiting, because once we really get a sense of what's possible, and this is the beautiful third option of doing it ourselves, I just feel like eventually this is going to be a lot of those other systems that are being sort of imposed will feel a bit redundant as we get empowered and feel the success of this small scale grassroots approach. So, you know, we're going through a massive ideological shift, and it might take a decade or more to complete that. So I see, in a way, all three of these options have a role to play in our you know, basically coming out of the slavery system.
Yeah, and I'll just last thing, which is like the reverse of the stakeholder capitalism system that that the World Economic Forum wants to do as part of their Great Reset. It's like one of the things I was looking at in the 90s was a concept that I came up with called entrepreneur's equity, where like based on the European, especially specifically the German system that they have for corporations, where in Germany it's like their union members would actually sit on the board alongside. It's like they wouldn't have full voting power, they wouldn't have controlling voting power of what the company has, but they do have a vote and how things happen within the company, especially when it comes to work health and safety.
Totally, at the least.
Yeah, but what I was talking about is like maybe more closely aligned what you're talking about with cooperatives, where the workers have a lot more say in the direction of how a company performs. That would be a bit hard to work out, because we do actually need to have leaders that are able to steer things well, and we don't want to have like too much of a mob rule by the employees, for lack of a better word, that could end up it's like not working out very well. But I think stakeholder capitalism turned on its head could be quite good, where civil society is actually having a lot more say in how corporations operate.
Yes, I agree. I love it.
Yeah.
What a great finale. Thank you so much, Marco. Oh my goodness. We did it. We actually did it. We managed to get through this. It's maybe an hour and a half or something, but we did it.
I think finally people can finally get a good idea of where we're coming from. It's really, we're talking about standing in your own power, reinvesting in yourself and your community at the same time. That it's a big win for, for both sides of the equation.
Absolutely. And you know, there's more of this to come. I feel like we're going to chat some more. Please leave us your questions in the comments, and we will continue exploring these topics in more detail in the weeks and the months to come, because it's just the beginning. This is the tip of the iceberg. I think things are really going to start to get very exciting in this transformative era that we're in. So thank you, Marco. Thank you very much for all the wisdom and the research that you've gathered. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye for now, everyone. See you again soon.
Well, I was happy with how that ended.